What's going on, everybody? Wesley Shoemaker back today with another episode of the Blue Gold Sports podcast. Today, I am joined by Ethan Bock of West Virginia Sports Now, my good friend who I've worked with for a couple years now, and we preview Big 12 play for West Virginia men's basketball. So that is the podcast today, and we appreciate you listening. What's going on, everybody? I am joined by Ethan Bock of West Virginia Sports Now, who covers West Virginia men's basketball, to preview the upcoming Big 12 portion of West Virginia's schedule. So first off, Ethan, kind of just how you doing today and your overall impressions of West Virginia through their non-conference portion of the schedule?
I'm good, Wesley. Thank you for having me on. Like you, I think we're both shocked that West Virginia is competing very well so far through about 12 games. So curious how they do in Big 12 play. It's definitely going to be a roller coaster. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows like it was in non-conference for the most part. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for me, I just think that this conference is obviously very, very tough, and you can see that by all these teams being ranked inside the top, what is it, 62 in the net, five of them ranked in the AP top 25, West Virginia cracking the AP top 25. But I'll go start with this. What was the biggest thing that you kind of saw West Virginia struggle with, or possibly the biggest thing that stuck out in a bad way to you through their first 12 games this season?
I think it was definitely the rebounding and the big man depth for sure. Both games they've lost, Purdue and Xavier. You had guys like Trey Mitchell, Jimmy Bell, Mo McGee, all deal with foul trouble, which then leads to having James Okongwu having to come in and produce big time minutes as a sophomore who didn't play at all really last year. So biggest thing was big man depth, which ties into the rebounding issue. They're about 260th in the country in rebounding, easily their worst strength. Pretty sure Stony Brook tied West Virginia in rebounding when they
They were
played.
out
So
rebounding them for most of the game too, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, you would never think West Virginia get out rebounded by Stony Brook, but they did pretty much. So those are the two biggest issues I've had with their team this year. If they can if they can get guys like Jimmy Bell, Trey Mitchell, Mo McGee, if those guys can kind of manage their fouls, no stupid fouls, you're gonna get in foul trouble as a big man. It's gonna happen. But just being able to manage that. Also, that's also on the coaching staff. How does Hugs manage the rotation? Do they play small with Trey at the five? Do they play big? Have two guys like Jimmy and Mo in at the same time, or Trey and Jimmy in at the same time? It's just interesting. I think you just got to make sure that you're not relying on James Okongwu to come in and produce and have to hold his own at the five spot for majority of the game.
Do you think it? I My whole theory for this has been you can't also have Trey Mitchell play the five for an extended period of time just because I just don't think that's within his skill set to try and play the five. I think he's best at a four, and we've seen him, especially against Xavier, struggle to rebound the ball. So obviously, if you go back to earlier in the year when they played Pitt, Trey Mitchell was at the five for an extended period of time. But do you think that's something that they could do? Would you like to see them go with Trey Mitchell over Okonkwo? Because personally, I think you've got to put in James there just because he adds length on the inside. If you're going to be dealing with some big dudes when you get into Big 12 play.
Yeah, I think you can go either way. Trey Mitchell, he's a four. He's a power forward, traditional power forward. He's a wing. He plays the four. His natural position is not to play the five. That's why he left Texas. That's why I didn't work with Chris Beard last year. So I don't think I don't think it's really a bad thing to throw him at the five because he's dealt with that in the Big 12. It could go better than James Okongwu has done so far. I think he struggled at times trying to hold his own. Obviously, only played a few games last year. James does have a lot of length and he can rebound the ball, but at times he misses assignments. So I think just having that veteran presence like Trey at the five is not a bad third option behind Jimmy and Mo. So you can go either way with it.
I also think Trey then adds that versatility on offense where you can start spreading guys out because Trey can obviously step behind the 3 point line. And then you have theoretically, if Trey's at your five, you have five dudes who can make a 3 point shot at any given time. And at that point, you're also then leaving driving lanes open to the rim. But kind of to flip off that, what's the thing that's surprised you the most in a good way for this team so far?
Shooting easily. Easily shooting. Looking at this team on paper in October, I thought this team would win games with defense. I was clearly wrong so far. They win games with offense, scoring about 83 points a game. Eric Stevenson's shooting roughly 48% from three. Didn't expect that. Emmett Matthews, 40% from three. Didn't expect that. There's a lot like there even like guys like Joe and Keedy, I didn't expect to shoot well, and they're shooting much way more than what I thought they were going to shoot heading into the season. So yeah, shooting's definitely, and specifically 3-point shooting, perimeter shooting is what I'm most surprised with this year.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go with just Keedy in general. I think Keedy's ability to score the ball has been a very welcome surprise for this team. Last year, I was looking this up today. Last year, Keedy scored more than 10 points 4 times. This year, he's already done it 6 times in 12 games. So, if you can kind of get that production on a higher level of competition in Big 12 play, and obviously, there's going to be days where Eric doesn't shoot well, where Emmett's not going to be there, or where Trey's not like not all, every guy's obviously going to have his be in his bag, as they say, every game. So I think having Keedy, who has been there, done that, what, 2, 3 times now in Big 12 play, is going to be something that West Virginia can really look to, not only on defense, but now also on offense too. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm surprised by Keedy as well. He's definitely Coach Huggins said he's worked on his game in the offseason on offense, and it's shown. I mean, he tied his career high the other game. Same with Joe. I'm surprised that Joe's coming off the bench. He's truly embraced the 6-man role, averaging a little under 11 points per game. That's the beauty of this team, though. There's not really like each guy that they've brought in from the transfer portal, and then you throw in Keedy into this group as well. So you got 5 guys that truly know what their role is. Like Eric's the vocal leader, Emmett's the leader. He's the guy that keeps everybody in line. And then you have guys like Trey who can just get a basket on all 3 levels of the floor. And then Joe and Keedy are your glue guys. They're your scrappy little guards that can get to the paint, find an open man, play defense. Joe's truly embraced that 6-man role, which has really helped a lot. And I think that's something that was missing from last year's team. I thought Malik Curry played 6-man role well, but at times he needed to step up and really get baskets for the team last year. I feel like Joe doesn't have as much pressure as Malik did.
I also think though that Joe doesn't have as much pressure, obviously, because there's so many guys around him that can space the floor and make shots. And I think Joe knows that he's needed most on defense, trying to add ball pressure, trying to harass an opposing guard, as well as then facilitate for this offense, not necessarily score. And we can see that Joe has the ability to score the ball if left open, if given the opportunity. It's just that he's not needed in that role. And when you can kind of have a more relaxed shooter, in a sense, someone who you know you can rely on, and then you don't have to turn to him, I think like that's like the depth on this team is ridiculous to me, especially if you want to look at last year's team. Last year you had Taz and Sean, and that was pretty much it. JB would be there some days, but other than that, especially on you had no interior presence on the offensive or really on the defensive end. So now you have 1 through 5 who can go get you some. Jimmy Bell's starting to turn the corner and really develop into what Hugs and company thought he could. And you also have Mo Wagi, who is making shots at a high rate and is showing his ability at translating from the JUCO level as well.
Yeah, I think this year's team's biggest strength, other than the shooting so far, is their depth. I said the big men depth was their weakness, but just overall as a team, they have 1 through 10 that would beat somebody else's 1 through 10. Last year's team didn't have that. Last year's team was just like throw your best 5 guys out there. It seems like this year Hugs is saying, screw that. I'm going to beat your best 10 with my best 10 or beat your best 13 with my best 13. Hugs literally will go 14, 15 deep off the bench if he wants to. He's done it. He's done it already a few games. So that's their biggest strength is their bench, is how much depth they have compared to other teams that they've played so far. It's telling. Once Jimmy Bell gets fatigued, once he's slow to get up the floor, throw Mo Wagi in, throw James in. And that goes for anybody that gets tired. They just have another guy off the bench that can produce.
And to that point, though, I feel like from my opinion, is we've seen Huggins kind of be in a more relaxed role than he has in past years while he's on the sideline. Do you think that he he probably will shorten rotations, but who do you see that could possibly make an impact who we might not think about and who might somehow see minutes and make use of those minutes going forward?
Oh, easily Seth Wilson. I'm really impressed with Seth Wilson's development over the first 12 games. Last year, you saw it a little bit in Big 12 play against Baylor in Waco, hit a couple shots. And we're slowly seeing that again this year where he comes off the bench and then he hits 3, 4 shots now. And it's a lot because he's either shooting deep twos or he's shooting threes. So he's shooting all these perimeter shots, and once he gets hot, he's going to keep shooting them. So him going 3 for 3 against Stony Brook from the 3-point line, that was perfect because it was within a stretch of him coming off the bench that it carried the momentum to where they could go on an actual run and just run away with it. So Seth's development into his sophomore year has been great. I know Coach Huggins has mentioned that he wants to get more playing time. I don't know how much time he's going to be able to find for him, just with all the guards. But if he continues to play the minutes that he's playing, and he has a game or so here and there where he's coming off the bench scoring near double figures, it'll be great for the team.
Yeah, I feel like if Seth can kind of sit in that 6 point range every game and do what he has to do and just carry minutes to get guys a break, because when you get into late January, early February, there's going to be guys that are playing serious minutes twice a week almost. And if it's like one of those Saturday Mondays and it's a Monday and you're going to need someone to step up, and I certainly agree with you that Seth can do that. Kind of transitioning though to the Big 12 as a whole, obviously we know how good it is, but for you, what do you think is going to be the biggest issue for West Virginia when it comes to Big 12 play?
I think the biggest issue is when they need to answer a team's run. Um, Eric Stevenson's brought that up midway through non-conference play. They really weren't hitting the mouth yet. They really didn't have a team go on a run on them, and then they dealt with that with Purdue and Xavier. Like they've had games where they've had to answer a team's run. They even had to deal with that against Stony Brook. So I think just adjusting. I just think adjusting to the Big 12 play. I mean, most of these guys know what they're getting into with the Big 12. Even the guys that are transferring in, like Joe and Eric, they know what they're going to deal with. Obviously, Trey and Emmett have played in the Big 12. Keys played in the Big 12. Like that's huge. I felt like guys last year kind of had to step up in a way and have different roles, even if they played in the Big 12. And now I feel like these guys on this team now have less pressure, I guess, because they know their role and they accept their role. There's no dramatics when it comes to them accepting their role. So I think just the biggest thing for them is just getting used to the Big 12, just in conference play, dealing with teams on the road, going on runs. How can they answer? Who's the guy they go to? There's a lot of questions with them answering a run, but it's just how their development of a team is going to last until Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I think a good point you make is the transfers that West Virginia has and their experience, because there was guys that they brought in, Damon Kerrigan, those types, Malik Curry, those types of guys last year that they had experience, but they had never played in a Power Five schedule. Joe Toussaint, he was in the Big Ten. Eric Stevenson, SEC. So these guys have played these high caliber teams and played these hard schedules, and I think going from that to the Big 12 is a lot easier than going from one of these smaller conferences, one of these mid majors to the Big 12. And I think that's something that you're going to probably see come late January, early February, when you kind of get into that grind of the Big 12 where where it's punishing and you're playing really good teams night in and night out, but you're going to have guys who not don't obviously have the exact Big 12 experience, but they have the experience of playing at this level of basketball for a sustained period of time.
Yeah, I'm not worried about any of these guys adapting to the conference. Most of them have either played in the Big 12 or have played in a Power 5 conference. I like your point about Malik, Damon, coming from mid-major conferences. It takes a lot to get used to the Big 12. It does. It's going to take a few road games in Lawrence, Lubbock, Waco, Ames, like all those tough environments. It's tough to get used to, and uh, there's only a few guys that you can think of that haven't played in the Big 12 at all or have had any of that Power Five experience, and that's Jimmy Bell, Mo McGee, Pat Suminick. Yeah, most of these guys have played in a Power Five conference, so I don't think there's anything that West Virginia fans should be worried about with that.
Another topic on Big 12 play, obviously Texas. They're a top 10 team right now. Head coach Chris Beard got into some off the court issues earlier this month. Do you think him not coaching them will have an impact on them going forward in Big 12 play? Because I think that although they are a really good team, I just think having that kind of distraction in the back of their heads will possibly get to a breaking point at some point in Big 12 play and hurt them. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Texas just off of, well, that obvious of Chris Beard being out. I'm also a little worried because they tend to, Texas as a team tends to get ranked high, start off really well during the season, and then they hit a point where they have a bad loss, and then everything just goes down the drain. Then their seed line just drops and drops and drops. I feel like this happens every year, regardless if this is Shaka Smart or Chris Beard, recently especially. I'm surprised so far how the duo of Tyrese Hunter and Marcus Carr has worked out. Just having two guys, two little small guards that both need the ball, that both have high usage rates. I'm shocked how well that's worked so far. I think Texas is a top 15 team in the country. I think their ranking, they deserve their ranking what they're at right now, top 10. But I just think in the end, they'll end up being kind of a little bit further down that top 25 list. As far as Chris Beard goes, obviously, I don't think he's going to be coaching for a while. So they're just going to have to get used to not having Beard. And honestly, that might not be a distraction in a few weeks once they know for sure he's not going to be coaching for them for the rest of the year.
And for all we know, it could bring them closer together as they know that there's going to be a lot of outside noise about Chris Beard, about the state of the Texas men's basketball program. And if Texas does let him go, that's a midseason coaching change. And who knows the effects that could have. A couple more things on Big 12 play here. What do you think? Who's your pick? Who's your pick to win the Big 12?
Kansas, easily. There's nobody else that is on the same tier with them. Kansas is on tier one, and then Texas and Baylor are on tier two. And then literally from 4 to 10, everybody else is on tier three. I don't think there's any bad team in the Big 12. I also don't think there's I don't think there's many good team, like great teams. I think Kansas is really the only great team. Baylor and Texas are going to have high seeds. West Virginia has the potential to have a high seed. Teams like Iowa State, Texas Tech, Kansas State, even they're going to have middle seed lines. But as far as the conference goes, this is Kansas's conference to lose. Jalen Wilson has taken that leap. That was much needed after losing Ochai Agbaji. And then just freshman Grady Dick, he's come on averaging over 15 a game. And then you have him and Wilson, Wilson could very well be the conference player of the year. He should be so far. So this is Kansas to lose. They're an overall great team. Unless they have like a mid-season disaster where they have injuries or distractions, I don't see them not winning the conference.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kansas is just head and shoulders above the rest of the Big 12 talent wise. And I think talent wins out in some of these types of games just when you have those dudes that can go get you a bucket, that can get a stop in crunch time. And Kansas has that. And a lot of teams just don't have that type of talent depth. A lot of teams in the Big 12 have one or two guys who are really, really good, but they don't have three, four, five, six guys that are really, really good. And Kansas does. I'm also going with Kansas. Now on West Virginia, how many games do you think they win in the Big 12 conference? And how many games do you think they have to win in the Big 12 conference to make the tournament as they sit at 10-2 right now?
I think I'll answer the second question first because it can transition a little bit easier into the first question. But I think if they win 7 conference games, and that includes the Big 12 tournament. So
So seven
if
total
that,
games between the 18 and then however many they
yep,
play in Kansas City. Okay.
yep. I think just seven gets you into the conversation. I don't think it gets you in. I think 7 gets you into the conversation. 7 could get you into Dayton in the first 4. I think 8 between the 18 conference games and the Big 12 tournament, 8 Big 12 wins can comfortably get you into the field. So if they're sitting at 18 wins by Selection Sunday, there's a chance they play in Dayton, but there's also a chance to get an outright at large 11 seed. So honestly, as long as there's no 7-game losing streaks like last year, I really don't think West Virginia should worry. Um, they have the talent and they have the vet. They actually have veteran leadership this year, it seems like, and we've talked about their strengths and weaknesses already. So it would just be overdoing it. But I think they win 10. I think they go 10-8 in the Big 12. If they just need to handle the non-Texas, Baylor, and Kansas group. Just handle that. Handle the rest of the conference at home, and you have 6 wins right there. Will they win all those games? Probably not. They'll probably go 4-2, 5-1 against the rest of the field. But what's going to matter the most is those 6 games between Texas, Kansas, and Baylor. If they can steal a couple of those, that's going to help a lot. Seemed like last year they couldn't steal any big time games. So I'm saying 10-8 when it's all said and done, the Big 12.
Yeah, I also went with 10-8 just because I think this team will really play well at home. I think you're going to, like last year, even you got really good crowds for a team that was scuffling big time. And I think this year there's a newfound energy within the program, within that building that there really wasn't last year for really any of the year. And I think now that you have a team that there's guys that people love, that fans love, and they love the fans back, and they play hard, and they kind of play this brand of basketball that's likable, that's watchable, that's easy to root for, and they're good on top of that. I think that's going to translate well at home. I do think that between the as you talked about between Kansas, Baylor, and Texas at home, I think they get 2 of those wins. I just think between Baylor and Kansas early in the year, I just think you snatch one of those. Obviously, there's going to be the big storyline of Jalen Bridges coming back to West Virginia for the Baylor game. And then I think that Texas is beatable. And I think that Morgantown is a hard place to play. And no matter how bad West Virginia was last year, it's still these teams still have to go across the country into a hostile environment and play a really good team at the end of the day when it's all said and done. And it's hard to do that no matter if you're Kansas or if you're Iowa State or if you're Kansas State. So I have 10-8. I think this team protects home court for the most part. And then I think they have the ability to go get a couple wins on the road here and there. I think they probably win 1 out of their 2 this weekend. Head back to Morgantown 1-1 in Big 12 play. And then you never know. They could steal a couple here and there on the road. They've done it before against top 10 Texas Tech teams, top 15 teams against Texas. So I could easily see them go 10-8 and get into the tournament as a top 7-6 seed.
Yeah, the biggest key is the road games. They really didn't have any road success at all last year. Like going into the pick game this year, they were on a 10-game road losing streak. So all those Big 12 road games are going to matter. You got to win at Kansas State. You have to win at Oklahoma State. Like these next 2 games are honestly must-win games for West Virginia, just based on you coming home and you automatically have to go play Kansas and Baylor back to back. So if they can knock off a few of these road games, even if you get 2 or 3, it's not you don't need to beat every single team or most teams in the conference on the road. Just get a few. Like this is the beauty of the Big 12. You can lose games and you will still have a high seed. Like the team in
Every game, every game's going to be a
2021.
quad 1 or quad 2 game. So
Yeah. Yeah, but West Virginia is done with bad losses. The rest of the games are going to be quad 1, quad 2 games. The 2021 team had like 9 losses on Selection Sunday, and they were still a 3 seed. It was a shortened COVID year, but they still had 9 losses, and they still got
Yeah,
a high seed. So
I think you make a really good point about taking care of business on the road, but also if you just look at their schedule, their first four home games are Kansas, Baylor, TCU, and Texas, and those are the four teams besides West Virginia in the top 25. Right, like those are four top 18 teams right now heading into the new year that you have to play within your first four home games of the year. So, I I mean, if you go 3-1 in that stretch, I would consider that a win. Even 2-2 probably is a huge victory for the Mountaineers, and then you go into February, and if you can win those first two against Oklahoma, Iowa State, maybe go on the road against Iowa State at the end of the month there, like you kind of knock out the heavyweights in a sense early on, and you don't really have to play the heavyweights later on in February. So they might start out slow, but I think they do start picking up wins as we get into the latter part of January and February.
well, a good part about their schedule is, like you said, they knock out the top 4 teams in the conference at home right away. Then their home schedule gets quote unquote easier, but in contrast, the road schedules is going to get much worse when they go into Lawrence and Waco in February. I'm pretty sure they go into Austin in February as well. Um, but there's pros and cons of this Big 12 schedule. There's no off days. They know that. We know that there's no off days. Every team's gonna have quality wins, and even the teams that lose though, they're gonna have quote unquote quality losses. No team's gonna have a bad loss. Every single team in the Big 12 was projected to make the tournament, with the exception of Oklahoma State, who was in the bubble. So all 10 teams are tournament quality teams.
Do you think there's a way Big 12 gets 9 teams in the field? Do you think that is like, I just feel like at some point there's going to be a team that starts to struggle and then everyone starts beating that team. And although everyone's capable of beating everyone in this league, at some point there's going to be a couple teams that probably start to fall when you get into the thick of things here. So do you think this league could actually get 8 or 9 teams into the tournament?
I think the ceiling's 8. I think it's really hard. You're gonna have to ask a lot to get 9 in. I
I
think
think
the
the
only
only way you
way,
get 9 in is if you have a very low seed in the Big 12 tournament win the Big 12 tournament.
yeah, yeah. If you have a Cinderella in the Big 12 tournament, or if I think there's one path, like hypothetically I can think of, for them to get 9 teams, and that's if Kansas is like the only dominating team, and you just have a bunch of like good but not great
Eight and
teams, like
10,
from
7 and 11.
from second ranked to ninth ranked. You just have a bunch of like mediocre to good teams, but no great. I think that's one way, that if they all beat each other up, and yeah, if they have like 10-8 records, or 9-9, or whatever, 11-7. I think that's one way they could get 9 in. It would probably take a miracle, but even if they got 8 in, 8 would be so impressive. That's eight. That's 80% of the league. So I think 8's their ceiling, and honestly, I don't think it's that far fetched. I think eight of these teams have the talent to make the tournament. I think the whole conference, if they were in any other league, would make the tournament. I would even argue last year that West Virginia would make the tournament if they played in any league that wasn't the Big 12. Like they had the resume, the non-conference resume to do it. They had the talent to do it. It's just the talent in the Big 12 just was not there. So 8 teams is their ceiling, and that's nothing to be ashamed of.
And if you're West Virginia, you just hope you're one of those 8 teams at the end of the day because last year you were on the outside looking in, and I just don't see a scenario where this team who has this much drive, this much to play for, this much desperation in a sense with so many fifth year guys who are leaders of this team, I just don't see them not making the tournament. I think there's going to be a sense of urgency once they hit Big 12 play. And I think if they get embarrassed in one of these games early on, there's going to be a big reality check of, okay, let's lock in. Let's do things. Let's move forward. And I'm not saying or expecting that they will get embarrassed. I'm just saying that they have the leadership on this group to turn things around if things do start going south. And that's not something you can say with every team in the country. And they also have the talent to have multiple guys score. They have 4 guys who average 10 points a game, 5 if you include Keedy, who's averaging 9-6 right now. So they have a multitude of guys who can do it. They have a multitude of guys who can do it on defense, and then add in you have Bob Huggins, the Hall of Fame coach. It's a recipe that could produce a pretty good season for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they missed the tournament. Honestly, I would
Yep.
be shocked if they lost 7 in a row twice again. I don't see it. There's such a big difference between last year's team and this year's team.
And even
It's not
last
even
year's team, like
close.
they battled so many times. Like against on the road against Kansas, they were what, down one or up one at half, something like that. Like they could have beat Iowa State
There
or whatever.
was
Like there's so
there
many
was not
winnable
one
games last
game
year.
there was
Yeah.
not one game they got blown out from start to finish except the Kansas game in Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament. There was not one time where they just got blown out by 20 the entire time. They were hanging at most, it would be like 10 to 15 points down on the road. They would fight, continue to fight, and then eventually they just would fall through. I don't see this team getting dominated in the Big 12. I also think last year's Big 12 is arguably more power heavy than this year's Big 12, just at the top of the conference. So yeah, I would be stunned if they somehow missed the tournament. I would be.
So at 10-8, where we both have them finishing, do you think they get top four in the league? You think they can get top four in the league at 10-8? You think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would tie some with somebody probably, but yeah, top 4 in the league, if not 5. I I have them projected to finish middle of the conference, whether that's 4, 5, or 6. So 10-8 is the record, and then I'm sure they'll tie with somebody. So 4, 5, or 6, they'll be in
They'll
the
probably
middle
be like,
tier.
yeah, they'll probably be like Oklahoma or somebody they're tied with at the end of the year. But I appreciate you coming on, Ethan. Once again, joined by Ethan Bock. Give him a follow on Twitter if you don't already. Most of you who listen to this probably definitely already follow him. I believe it was what, Ethan Bock _ correct?
Correct.
Yeah, Ethan Bock. So ETHANBOCK _ Give him a follow. Appreciate you, my friend, for coming on. And that will wrap this up. If you made it this far, I do appreciate you listening. Once again, I am Wesley Shoemaker. Today, I was joined by Ethan Bock, and this is the Blue Gold Sports Podcast.